Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser.
Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. Fire is an age-old nemesis of civilized human beings. Homes, businesses, and on occasion, whole cities have been wiped out by out-of-control fire. In 1736, Benjamin Franklin started the first fire department called the Union Fire Company in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Today, professional and volunteer firefighters are found in cities, villages, and rural areas across the land. Their mission is to preserve life and prevent the destruction of property. To speak about this important public service is the fire chief of Collinsville, Illinois. Mark Emert recently came to Collinsville after a long career with the Affton, Missouri Fire Protection District, where he progressed through the ranks to become the assistant fire chief. In Missouri, Chief Emert was deeply involved in training and was awarded Instructor of the Year in 2011 by the Greater St. Louis Area Fire Chiefs Association and the Greater St. Louis Area Training Officers Association. Chief Mark Emert, welcome to Conversation.
Thank you.
So, you've had a long career, like 25 years, something like that?
25
You've been a
years at
firefighter?
Affton, yeah.
What have you seen, what were things like 25 years ago when you started compared to a new start today?
They're pretty much night and day difference. When I first came into the fire service, there weren't a lot of academies. EMS was just starting. We saw a lot more fires and fewer EMS calls, and now that's kind of transitioned into fewer fires and more EMS calls.
So you're saying that Collinsville and Affton and other fire districts are dealing more with injured people, picking them up, than you are with fires?
Oh, absolutely. Our EMS service runs approximately 2,700 calls a year, where the fire department side only runs about 700 or so.
Mm-hmm. Now, excuse me, as to the number of fires, are we seeing less fires than we used to because of better construction and better materials, or is it about the same as it's always been?
Well, I think that we're seeing fewer fires because of more awareness about the dangers of fires and the aspects, but also the building codes, the building construction type of things has become more progressive, and it's just that simple awareness and prevention part that has helped on the fire side.
Well, and I'm not sure if you're the guy to ask about this, but in general, what is it that has changed in building codes that have made fire less likely?
Well, I think just the fire stopping, the types of materials that is being
what
used.
is fire stopping?
Well, the closing up the air spaces to prevent fire travel. A lot of fires that start now are contained to the room of origin, whereas before they would get up into the attics or void spaces and travel the buildings and cause a lot more damage to those buildings. So,
are you talking about private residences, or are you talking about commercial buildings when you talk
both?
About that?
Both. Probably we have a lot more residential fires, especially in this area, but the commercial fires is where we saw the greatest dollar losses. So there's been a focus in both areas.
Did you ever see a movie called The Towering Inferno?
Sure.
Talk about that. I mean, was that realistic, what was in that movie, or was that was just Hollywood?
Well, of course, a lot of it's Hollywood. When you actually have a fire like that, you don't see the firemen, you don't see the things because of all the smoke and heat and things like that. But the causes, the electrical causes that were in that movie, the way the fire traveled, undersized wiring, things like that, is certainly something that you see today. Mm-hmm. You know, the inspectors try and get out there and work with the contractors and the architects and stuff to prevent all that, but it still happens.
If someone were to come into Collinsville and start building, I don't know what you would call a high-rise for Collinsville, but let's just say it was 5-6 stories.
Right.
What would your involvement be in that?
Well, we would be involved from the very beginning. We have a lot of different entities within the city, the community development, my fire marshal. He would be intimately involved in not necessarily the design, but in approving the life safety codes and enforcing those things as the building is designed and architects they work hand in hand together now.
Do you find that architects pretty much know what they're doing?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think they're as
'Cause
aware and cautious as anybody else is.
In that movie, The Towering Inferno, of course, this is Hollywood,
Exactly.
but you had the architect who designed properly, but then you had, I guess, the chief builder or the general contractor who was trying to save some money.
Right.
Is that a possibility, that you have correct designs, but you have people substituting other materials if this was happening in Collinsville, or are you actually watching as stuff goes in? Do you have inspectors?
Oh, no, we have an inspector process that we do before they close any walls up. We have electrical contractors, and the plans all have to be approved and sealed prior to that. And then we actually go to the site and make visits to make sure they're actually doing what they're going to say they're going to do.
Well, that's the difference. I mean,
Right.
you can have a plan that says do this, but if the guys on the site are doing something else, then you wind up, in a movie.
Right, and we have building inspectors and the fire department, and we all actually come out and do on-site visits. So there's checks and balances there.
So now, in new construction, do you get fires?
Well, yeah, you can have a fire in any construction.
Why would you have a fire? What would
Well,
be, generally, what are the causes of fires?
We see a lot of electrical fires, not necessarily due to the size of the wires, but it's more in the human error side of it and overloading circuits, not making the circuits are grounded.
This is during the construction phase, then you're saying, or is this
after
the house?
after somebody would move into a house.
Right.
If maybe they're using an appliance that's not UL approved, or they use extension cords, or they plug in 4 or 5 different things into one outlet.
Like one of those little skinny white wires?
Yeah, those are not. It's not recommended that you do that. Electricity causes heat, and we get too close to draperies, floor coverings, things like that you want to avoid.
What about those radiator kind of heaters that people bring into their homes?
Most of them are generally safe. What we occasionally see is the space heaters. Somebody will use the wrong type of fuel, and that causes a problem.
What would be an example?
It's designed for kerosene, and they may use gasoline because it's a little cheaper or something.
Yeah.
And gasoline's flammability is so much higher, and the product's not designed for it. So we also see people, they'll get them too close to the draperies. A blanket will fall across it. Things like that. They used to be where they would tip over and cause fires. Now they've got tip devices where they shut off if they tip over. So it's getting safer, but we still see the occasional fire.
And going back to extension cords, just so that we're doing this show so that people get some idea of what not to do.
Right.
You don't want to plug in like a window air conditioning unit that has a big thick cord into some little skinny white cord and then run it across the room to a plug.
Right. You need to match.
Explain why.
Well, the current that runs through the cords, you need to have the proper size wire for the proper sized appliance. And if it's a 110 or 220, you need to match the cords appropriately. And they're not really designed, extension cords are not designed to replace permanent wiring. So that's actually against the code. So you just want to avoid that at all costs. And you don't want to run extension cords under carpeting or rugs or under furniture trying to hide them.
Because the wire gets hot.
Yeah, and there's no air circulation around the cord that way.
And the carpet will actually catch on, or it starts to smolder, I guess.
It starts to smolder and then feeds and grows, and it has a bad ending. So the other types of fires we see is the misuse of candles, or not the misuse, but the improper use where they light them and walk away and go to the grocery store or something, and then that creates an issue too. So
I had a very good friend in rural Edwardsville that same thing happened down the basement. Actually, his son lit a candle and then left.
Right.
And next thing you know, they were living somewhere else for a month.
Yeah, fire creates a lot of damage, and it's just a terrible experience to go through. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. So,
well, you've seen a lot of them, I guess.
I've seen my fair share.
What, in your experience, what's normally is the reason that you're here today is because I saw on the news several weeks ago a fire that occurred. And it was a nice house, a newish looking house. And it's suddenly, you know, because we're used to seeing a lot of houses in the inner city, a lot of houses in the East St. Louis area, that buildings that are just going up, you know, they're just burning up. But you don't normally see houses that are relatively new burning up. And so it's like, wow, let's talk about that. What is it that causes something like that to happen? And so that's what I really want you to address at this point. Then we're going to talk about older houses and the problems there.
Right. Well, I mean, first of all, fire doesn't discriminate between poor or rich or white or black or anything. It's common amongst everybody, across all races and classes of people, if you will. But in the situation you're talking about, it could have been just what we mentioned before with the electrical cords not being misused, or it could have been a cooking fire. Having not investigated it, I don't really know. But there's just so many different possibilities there.
If you have a cooking fire, which you're talking grease here, right?
Yeah.
What's the proper procedure? Because people, you know, the tendency to grab some water, a glass of water, and throw it in there. What, you know, that's not going to work out, is it?
Right. No, that just splashes the oil and makes it go everywhere and spreads a fire. My recommendation as a fire chief is, if you have a fire on your stove, is to get out of the building, call 911, and then let us come and do our job. If it's something that is in a little pot and you can put the lid on it and smother it, by all means do that. But if it's growing out of control, then you need to really leave the building and call 911.
Do you recommend that people have their own in-home fire extinguishers?
I do, just for those little fires that I might have mentioned. If it's just a little pot and you can't get it to go out, as long as it's a proper extinguisher, then you can try that. But we really don't want you to spend a lot of time in that building, and the smoke and stuff that comes off that's very noxious, and we don't want to create a situation where we have to come in and get you out. We'd rather you be safe. We can replace everything else.
There are several different types of extinguishers, aren't there? Can you just describe the various kinds of fire extinguishers?
Well, the one we recommend for the home is just a simple ABC. It's going to take care of paper fires, your cooking fires, things like that. You also have carbon dioxide extinguishers that can be used for different things. There's the commercial extinguishers for Purple K, things like that. But the ones you see at Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever is generally just an ABC extinguisher.
And what does ABC stand for?
It's the different types of fires that you would have.
So there's an A fire, a B fire, and a C fire?
Well, there's the chemical fires, there's wood fires, there's ordinary material fires, things like that, electrical fires that the ABC covers a gamut on which types of fires that may be occurring in your home.
And do these fire extinguishers that you buy at Home Depot or Lowe's, do these have the capability in most cases to put out this small fire?
In most cases, yeah. Yeah, that's, you know, just a little one they put out quite a bit of fire. Unless you're trained, and fire districts do that, we have for different fire extinguisher training classes to show you how to operate those. And that's an important thing too, is knowing how to properly use the extinguisher.
You're supposed to get it down low, not up where the flame is, but
right,
down
you need to get down at the base of
the
fire to do that.
A lot of people make that mistake, don't
right,
they?
they spray up high, and then it's just like us when we go into the building with a hose. We try to get to the base of the fire, not where the flames are actually at. So.
And the objective here is actually to cut the oxygen supply out of the fire?
Yes.
Because that's, again, going back to what I learned back in junior high school, but some people never did catch this when they were in school, that fire requires several components. Why don't you describe that?
Well, it requires oxygen, it requires fuel, it requires a sustained chemical reaction, things like that. And if you remove any one of those things, then the fire goes out. Generally speaking, what we try to do is smother the fire or remove the oxygen.
Right.
And that's the quickest way, whether you use water, a chemical agent, or whatever.
CO2 would
yes.
replace the oxygen around the fire.
Yes.
And then it would just go
Right.
and it's
Kind
done.
of the best, if you picture, you see the guys out at the airports with the foam, and that's what that's doing. It's preventing that oxygen from sustaining that reaction.
And do you recommend that people carry extinguishers in their car?
No, I don't personally. If that would be a personal choice. If you're in a vehicle and it catches fire, there's so many combustibles in those vehicles, and then your gas tanks and all the materials that is used in building that. Just get out of the car to a safe place and call for the fire department. We really don't recommend that people try and fight their own fires. That's why they pay taxes for a fire district or a fire department.
Do you get many car fires?
We've had a couple since I've been here. We had, when I was over in Affton, we would have more. We had Interstate 55 running through the district, and we would get some car fires on those. But it seems like it's going down.
What do you generally find as the cause of a fire in a car? Or is there no general? I mean, what have you found has caused fires?
Somebody's working on it electrically and don't get things quite right. It could be the engine backfires. It's just so hard to tell.
Battery?
A battery, or maybe the carburetor on an older model car would backfire and get into the paper air filters and things like that. But it's generally speaking, my experience has been it's an electrical problem somewhere in the vehicle. So, and you generally can't get to that. If your car starts smoking and the interior fills with smoke and you pull over, if you open that engine hood, the covering on it, it's going to flame up in your face. So that's why I say just get away from it.
You just added an oxygen supply.
Right, yeah. So just let the professionals do their job.
And I seem to recall back earlier in the conversation, you were indicating that home fires are, or at least a lot of home fires are also electrical.
It seems that way. We've had a couple here in Collinsville since I became the chief, and we've traced it back to some sort of an electrical problem.
So, all right, so somebody's in their home, and hopefully they have a smoke detector in their home. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden they hear the smoke alarm go off. What shall they do?
Well, get up and get out. Make sure everybody exits the building. Have an escape plan. We teach that in the schools a lot to the young kids, is go home and practice a fire drill at home.
Now, just tell briefly what is it that's in this plan. What should a fire plan look like?
Well, just if you have young children, have a diagram of how to get out from their bedrooms or from the family room. You know, you want to get out, you want to crawl, stay low beneath the smoke. You want to get to the closest exit and have a meeting place outside, whether that might be the mailbox or the neighbor's house or something like that. But don't stay in the house. Don't go back in the house to try and recover some valuable or something. That's when we see a lot of people do that, they end up not coming back out. The smoke, the building materials have changed. You asked me earlier about differences from when I started to today. The fires that I went to back as a young fireman were wood fires. They were paper, they were ordinary construction. Now it's all plastics and foams and things like that, and they burn hotter, faster, and the smoke is so much more deadly.
It's really, I mean, the smoke for those is really much more poisonous, isn't it?
Absolutely.
As opposed to just smoke.
Absolutely, and
just breathing that will actually damage your lungs.
Yes, if you by chance survive that, you're going to end up with some breathing difficulties. If chances are you're not. It's just such a poisonous atmosphere that's why the fire department has the self-contained breathing apparatus, or we would not be able to go inside.
And pets, pets in the house, you're getting out. I mean, do you recommend that people,
well,
should they look for the pet? Should they have something? I've seen in some homes they have on the exterior, pet inside or enclosed. I forget the wording there.
And we will certainly, as firemen, try and go in and rescue that pet. If the dog or the cat is gone and is hiding somewhere, you need to save yourself. You know, I have a dog. I'm an animal lover, and that would break my heart, but it's kind of a reality, you know, and we'll certainly do everything we can. We can actually carry masks to give CPR to dogs, you know, so we're certainly aware of that. So, but we need to get the human beings out first, you know.
And not that many weeks ago, the news media was making a big deal about, and I forget, there was some big city mayor who went back into a building that, from the look on your face, you missed this piece of news, but there was out east, some big city mayor. I mean, his, you know, like the police around him were trying to keep him. Maybe that was it. They were trying to keep him, but he's macho man, and he ran back in, and luckily he saved somebody, got him out of there. But that's the kind of behavior that you're probably not happy with when people see that, because it sounds like you're saying that more people are going to get killed than are going to get saved by running back into a burning building.
Right. You know, I think probably he was more lucky than good. I think that is certainly not something that we would want to use an example of. I mean, that all's well that ends well, but that's certainly not the rule. That's the exception.
When you enter a house, are you entering with a burning house? Are you entering with your oxygen on at first?
Well, right. The SCBAs that we have, we approach the door where we're going to enter the building, and we have all that equipment on, and we do a gear check, and we make sure that all the exposed skin is covered. We make sure that our mask is on and sealed properly, and that we're actually on air. It's actually not oxygen, it's actually the air that we're breathing now. So, and we go in, and that we usually get 25 to 35 minutes out of a tank of air that we can go in and operate on.
How long does it usually take? You just said 25, 30. How long does it actually take usually to knock down the average, the normal fire?
Just a few minutes. Usually we're able to get there because people are calling 911, and the notifications come so quickly now. We're able to get there within 5 minutes, and we get lines deployed and get ready to go, and we can get in and knock down those room and contents fires, as we call them, and in just a few minutes, and prevent a lot of damage that way. So that's the other thing I guess I would suggest, is that early notification of getting out of the house, calling 911, and that's going to prevent a lot of damage and save lives.
When do you knock holes in the roof, and why?
Well, we try and get those gases I talked about are so poisonous, and we go into those atmospheres, and if the fire is on the second floor, or if we have access through the roof, we try and, it's called vertical ventilation, and we try and
You're creating a
get
chimney.
those gases out of there, and it looks like we're causing a lot more damage than is necessary, but it's saving some of the interior from that smoke damage, the heat damage, and stuff like that, and it makes it easier for the firemen to operate in those buildings.
This would be done after the fire has been put out, though, right?
Well, sometimes during. Ventilation is a coordinated effort with suppression. So as you enter the building, the interior company officer would say, hey, we're close to the seat of the fire, so go ahead and open the building up. And that way it allows the fire to grow just a little bit, but then they can see it and put it out.
So, all right, so fire alarm goes out, you guys jump in the truck, and then you're down at the site.
Right.
How is this managed? I mean, you're the chief. You don't go to all these fires. And by the way, we got about like 5 minutes left here.
Okay.
So if there's anything we haven't talked about, make sure you jump in with this. So you don't normally go to every single fire, I'll bet. But you've got your guys that are down there at the fire. How is this managed?
Well, in Collinsville, we have a shift commander that he's my eyes and ears, so to speak, and he goes and he assumes command of the fire, and he coordinates all the other activities with the incoming trucks. On the individual trucks, I have a lieutenant who is the company officer, and he actually focuses on managing his specific guys on that truck, and then whatever task he's assigned by the company commander. So it's all part of an incident command system that come down through a presidential directive that we all try and operate relatively the same way, and we can go from here across the river or neighboring departments such as Edwardsville or State Park or anywhere, and we all speak the same language. So, and it's part of accountability also.
How important are having a working carbon monoxide detector in the home?
It's very important. We see that, especially in the wintertime when people start turning on their fireplaces or turning on their furnaces. If those aren't serviced properly, they can make CO in large parts per million. So
why? Some people probably still don't know what carbon monoxide is and why it's dangerous. Just describe that.
Well, carbon monoxide is a product of incomplete combustion, and it has, I think it's 300 times, and don't quote me on that, but more affinity to your red blood cells than oxygen does. So it basically displaces the oxygen, and you
choke to
suffocate.
death, basically. Right. And well, we've only got a couple of minutes. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you would like to say to people?
Well, one thing I'd like to mention is that the schools are getting ready to let out for the year. So there's going to be more kids out on the street riding their bikes, skateboards and such. So as you're driving back and forth to work or going to lunch or whatever, just watch out for those kids. We don't like to see those kids get hurt. So
then your EMS
springs
into, but you don't want that.
We don't want that. No, we're just as happy to be not used as anything. So.
How many firehouses do you have in Collinsville?
We have 2 in Collinsville. One downtown and then one out on Beltline Road.
And the total number of men that are under your command?
30.
30.
Yes.
And probably, I mean, to those who haven't had a fire, it costs. To those who have had a fire, no price.
Money well spent.
Money very well spent. And anybody who has been picked up by EMS during an emergency, again, money very, very, very well spent.
Well, and those are the negative exposures. We like to have some positive exposures and get out and meet the folks, but we really enjoy serving the community.
Thank you very much for coming and spending this half hour with us, Chief.
All right. Thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome. And to my audience, I've been speaking with the Fire Chief of Collinsville, Illinois, Mark Emert. I hope that you benefited from this conversation, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.